everyone, this is People in Power, and I'm Summer El-Shahat. On today's program, witch trials.
Nikunduni alundo d'après Emmanuel atena alundo ambageti mamani, ce qui suppose que ton le nani monga aussi mon kenani là. Mobani toni.
In the Central African Republic, or CAR, the power of sorcery is feared by everyone, from villagers to government ministers. This is reflected in one of the most extraordinary legal systems in the world. Every year, hundreds of men, women and children are arrested, tried, convicted and imprisoned for the crime of witchcraft. But they're perhaps the lucky ones. Others suspected of practicing black magic are often tortured and murdered by angry mobs. In this climate, the fear of being accused is very real, no matter how unjustified such a claim might be. Sorious Samura has been exploring a disturbing phenomenon, a world of witchcraft.
They call it likundu. It means practicing witchcraft. And in Central African Republic, doing so is a crime, punished by the government with imprisonment. My journey begins in Mbaiki, a region in the southeast of the country I'm told is blighted by high levels of witchcraft activity, which keeps state authorities busy. I'm here in Mbaiki, and these streets is the center of law and order. All the main institutions are right here next to each other. To my left is the gendarmerie or the army. Up the hill is the prisons and the law courts. And right in front of me is the police station. To my right is the office of the prosecutor. A large amount of the work this main institution carry out is to investigate, try, and imprison suspected witches. I head first to the local prison and meet the director, Bisaulo Ambrose, who provides me a tour of the facilities. Here, he tells me they've got locked up a total of 42 prisoners. How many are here for witchcraft then?
18 impliqués pour la pratique de charlatanisme et sorcellerie.
That's almost half of them. All female prisoners are held in this wing. Outside, a sign says there's 6 of them, PCS, for the practice of witchcraft. Jean Yassi reported her nephew to the police. They settled the dispute and she thought that was the end of the matter. But it wasn't. This time, her nephew reported her to the police as a witch, and they imprisoned her without even a trial. That was 3 years ago. It's not unusual for women like Jean to languish for years in prison whilst waiting to be tried. Most others here, however, have had the dubious privilege of a trial. I'm also introduced to 15-year-old Cynthia. When she was only 13, Cynthia was accused of being a witch, tried and imprisoned here. And unlike the other inmates, she believes the accusations leveled against her. A few months later, responsibility for her care was granted to a nearby Catholic mission. But only yesterday, it was alleged that Cynthia threatened to eat the heart of one of the nuns. And so, she has been returned here to the prison. Serving time in a Central African Republic prison is a grueling ordeal for anyone. But accused and condemned witches have to also deal with fellow inmates who fear, stigmatize, and assault them. And it isn't only the other prisoners who are afraid of the so-called witches.
Ça constitue un danger aussi bien pour les autres détenus que pour les éléments de la garde et pour ma personne. Par exemple, je prends le cas de la maison d'arrêt. Il y a même un élément de garde qui est en ce moment souffrant. On ne sait pas comment, mais en ce moment, le sergent est là présent. Ça fait 2 semaines, il est souffrant.
This prison is so poor, it can't afford to feed its detainees. So every day, prisoners are sent out to work, and the money they bring back is used to feed them. Accused and condemned witches, however, stay behind. For if recognized in town, they risk being beaten, tortured, and killed by the community. I want to find out how the police investigate and process witchcraft cases. So I head to a village I'm told is so gripped by witch hysteria. People call it the witchcraft village. Bogado. Bogado is Bogado's head of police.
Le dossier brûlant ici à Bogado, c'est la sorcellerie. Nous le traitons chaque année et quotidiennement.
Can you tell me in details how you investigate these cases?
Et nous faisons d'abord nos efforts pour rassembler les preuves à travers ces praticiens, ces voyants, mais c'est pas nous. C'est grâce à eux grâce à eux qui nous aident vraiment à ce travail.
He tells me about a recent case of a man who stood accused by a traditional healer, by family members, and by the police of having eaten his nephew's heart. In fear for his life, the suspected witch fled the village. If somebody comes and says, I have eaten somebody's heart, and that person is still working, is still moving, how can you take that as a real physical evidence?
C'est une question embarrassante. Vous avez raison. On mange le cœur, et puis la personne continue à circuler. Comme la société existe, je veux dire, la société existe suivant le code pénal centrafricain. Donc on est obligé, à travers ces praticiens, à travers ces voyants, de faire ce travail et on va au parquet.
I want to find out more about the witchcraft case the police is investigating. So I trek deep into the bush to talk to the main protagonist. I find them in the middle of a healing session. So this is a victim here, and he's now being treated by the traditional healer. A few weeks ago, Lamin Cecile started feeling pains throughout his body. He went to the hospital, but claims they couldn't find out what was wrong with him, and suggested he visit a traditional healer. The traditional healer told him that part of his heart was stolen through witchcraft. And the culprit was none other than his very own uncle.
Okay, ketamburso kwa Tony na la bonambia ni botibe. Donc yimburu niso ala gite na remplacer na place bête biniso.
Remplacer be mo personne so mugni tene afa gi mo.
Tite na fambi mais
We've heard from other villagers that the uncle fled because some of the villagers here, or possibly including you, tried to attack the uncle.
non, mbeto ti betulo. Bon, nous sommes betu kui, ça que le sentir nous sommes beto.
I next talked to the traditional healer, who is also the chief of this pygmy village. No one is allowed inside his mystically enhanced hut, so I sit at the edge. Traditional healers like this one play a major role in fomenting witch hysteria. They're consulted by the local population for any ailment. They blame it on witchcraft and point the finger at other family members, usually those who are old and alone. Lamin Sensei accused his uncle for being the one who bewitched him. Lamin and the traditional healer are desperately searching for the old man. We've managed to track him. He's still hiding for fear of his life, but he's willing to talk to us. We were told that you were attacked by the villagers. Can you explain to us what happened?
Yes, sir, parce so. Bi giteti malade sur le soir, bon, a population quoi pepe. Gi a famille, a malenge timbini, a tona itati la kui, il faut à la famille. À la salle accusation ambigi, 5 binga debi, datete ko bela tu, datete malade tu le pepe. Binga ti fanga le pepe. Soko gi vene tanganga.
But do you believe in witchcraft?
Ambeni a likundo ekexiste a ekeda. Mais a ke para na many place.
A case like this here is typical, even mundane. Lamin's uncle, like every other accused witch, and like most every other person in this country, believes witches exist. And once this type of allegations are made, there are 2 basic routes for their resolution. The justice of angry mobs, or the justice of courts of law. It's Friday. The day of the week, public trials are held. Before proceedings begin, I meet the judge and general prosecutor of the Mbaiki region, Jazeera Govon.
Ouais, morning.
And how many cases of witchcraft are on today?
Il y en a une multiplicité d'affaires de sorcellerie. Sur les affaires inscrites au rôle, sur 12 affaires inscrites au rôle, il y en a 10 qui concernent exclusivement la sorcellerie.
The first case is against Lucien Tabac, who stands accused of committing the crime of witchcraft. The accusers, her own family.
Na preuve ni peut accuser ita chimbi senge tongo so pepe so ke mama chimbi lo ke na likundu so ke amena iso lo ke bina azonia so kamba solo zena goti wa chimbi le falo.
Also testifying against her is Antoinette, Lucien's sister.
Nandoto solo londo ke lo lango na dachimbi. Le solo ke lango na dachimbi, bibati mitene lo gasenge, anda lo gacha onfutimbi na mnenge.
They claim she is responsible for a mysterious swelling in her nephew's leg. And since that allegation emerged, villagers started blaming her for a whole raft of deaths going back decades, including the demise of her father, her husband, her in-laws, and even her own children. Throughout the proceedings, Lucien stridently maintains her innocence. Now, the prosecutor speaks.
Baba Tchala quoi cuit c'est ça?
Oui, oui.
Il avait quel âge?
Baba Queen a 76 ans.
76 ans.
Un homme âgé.
Et vous pensez quand Queen a 76 ans, c'est une mort pas naturelle?
One by one, he demolishes the arguments of the accusers.
Nikunduni alundo d'après Emmanuel atenalundo ambageti mamani, ce qui suppose que ton le nani monga aussi mon kenani là. Mobani Tony.
He is making the case for Lucien rather than against her. And throughout the day, he does the same for every other single witchcraft case. He is defending the witches. Your role as a prosecutor, isn't it to prosecute people? But what we saw today in the courts was basically you trying to defend people who are brought in for witchcraft or trying to find a way to make sure that they are free.
La sorcellerie, écoutez, on a cru en la sorcellerie dans l'Europe du Moyen-Âge, mais la dissipation de l'obscurantisme, les progrès de la science ont permis à la lumière de chasser l'obscurité. Et aujourd'hui, la sorcellerie, mais ce n'est plus que... Aucun État moderne aujourd'hui ne devrait inclure dans un code pareille disposition contre la sorcellerie. Les gens peuvent croire à ce qu'ils veulent. Le problème est que il ne faudrait pas que ces croyances-là jettent en prison des personnes innocentes. Sur la base d'une affirmation qui ressemble en fait à un conte de fées, je ne sais pas, c'est Harry Potter, mais...
Javier Govon is lobbying for the removal of the 2 articles criminalizing witchcraft from the Penal Code. However, his voice is a lone one, not only in the region, but in the country. For witch trials are not only held in remote rural areas, not at all. I traveled to Bangui, the capital city of Central African Republic. Like many capital cities, it's the modern urban space where the educated classes live. And yet, in the main tribunal of Bangui, a woman is being tried for witchcraft, accused by her own brother-in-law. The only difference here is that this prosecutor doesn't appear to be particularly sympathetic to her plight.
Ce sont des faits suspects, un comportement suspect, des paroles suspectes, amenées à suspecter une personne effectivement de sorcellerie.
Last year, a special committee of legal experts convened to review the articles against witchcraft and advise the government on whether they should be maintained or removed. The committee recommended keeping the articles. So I meet the top legal and political figures in the country to understand the logic behind this decision.
Il y a eu encore un deuxième séminaire de validation. Si on enlève, chacun va se lever un matin pour dire à mon voisin sorcier, puisqu'il n'y a plus de justice, je vais faire justice moi-même.
So the courts supposedly keep a lead on a superstitious, temperamental population of violent dispositions. But there is more to pragmatism behind the decision to maintain the articles. For it soon becomes clear that the country's elite also believes in witchcraft.
Ça met en conflit les membres de la société. Surtout que la manifestation même de la sorcellerie est multiple. Deux fois, ça se produit sous forme de métamorphose, où on transforme un être humain par un animal.
C'est la sorcellerie qui s'exerce la nuit. Lorsque nos amis de l'Occident arrivent et qui disent « la sorcellerie n'existe pas, vous condamnez des gens pour rien ». Dans le monde, il y a des gens qui croient en Dieu. est-ce que les gens qui croient en Dieu sont capables de démontrer aujourd'hui que Dieu existe?
Mob justice transpires with alarming regularity throughout the country. In the Lobaye region, only last month, there were 22 mob killings of so-called witches. Back in Mbaiki, we don't have to wait long before encountering a case. We've just arrived in the local hospital where we've been told that a victim of mob justice has been admitted. I'm going to try and talk to her. Her name is Jean Bangui. She's been badly beaten and clearly in a lot of pain. She tells me she went to a friend's house in the hope of staying there the night. As there was no one home, she headed into the kitchen to wait. In the middle of the night, her friend entered the room and upon seeing her, started shouting, "Witch! Witch!" Soon, a crowd gathered. The doctor examines Jean in front of medical students and staff. He turns her around, pulls up her blouse and points to a small carrier tied to her back. Unrolling the plastic, he uncovers 2 bags, one filled with herbs and the other with money. Some of the doctors and nurses laugh, and for Jean, things may have just gone from bad to worse. For everyone knows that witches use sorcery to enrich themselves. I asked the doctor if the bags are proof that Jean is a witch.
Oh, ça c'est une question un peu difficile pour moi. Ça peut-être ça c'est une question qui devait être posée aux juristes.
So you saying you believe in witchcraft?
Voilà, c'est un mais je sais que la sorcellerie existe parce que ça c'est une conception générale qui sait que la sorcellerie c'est une pratique occulte qu'on ne peut pas expliquer, qui existe. Mais moi dire que celui-là c'est un sorcier, je n'ai pas la science pour le faire.
And so it is in this topsy-turvy world where even doctors believe in magic, that despite Jean being the victim of horrific violence, she's the one who will be investigated, possibly tried, and even imprisoned. 3 days after we left, the angry mob found Jean again, this time beating her to an inch of her life. It's difficult to think of a way forward for this country. The majority of the population believes in witchcraft and demands that the witchcraft laws remain. The laws, in turn, legitimize the beliefs of the people and the violence they so often instigate. This is a place where, if you are alone and poor, you don't want to grow old or grow up.
That's it for this edition of People and Power. If you'd like to comment on this report or any other matter, we'd love to hear from you on aljazeera.net/English. That's it from me, and until next time, bye-bye.